This is Border Battle with King and CJ. With King.
You want to go get a hot dog at halftime? Well, guess what? You can also take the under in the second half of 25. You know what I mean?
And CJ.
You can win Super Bowls right now with me and Grandpa Brady over here. Let's do it that way.
Presented by the fine students and faculty of the Oklahoma State University School of Media and Strategic Communications in beautiful Paul Miller Building. Broadcast live on KXZY, OSU Student Radio. And now, live from Studio 318, it's Border Battle with Jordan the Great King and CJ the Viking Notch.
Welcome back into Studio 318. Thank you, Landon. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ on OSU Student Radio KXZY, Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, Border Battle on Demand for those more visually inclined that want to watch us. Those are the two ways you can do so. All the links on our Facebook page, Border Battle Show. That's facebook.com/Border Battle Show, or Border Battle OSU on Twitter. That's all the ways you can reach out to us if you have any inclination to do so. On Twitter, make sure to tweet hashtag #GetRicky. We're still trying to get Ricky Fowler on the show. I think we might have too much on our hands there, Chris. But I'm King. I'm from Wisconsin. He's CJ from Minnesota. That we formed the Border Battle because we like to argue a lot. Joining us today, former OSU SMSC standout, current writer at the News Press. He does radio at Triple Play, kind of my boss at Triple Play. Kieran Steckley. Kieran, thanks for taking out a few minutes to talk some NFL draft with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and you will not be fired since you let me come on your show.
Thank goodness.
Oh.
That is a relief off my chest. I was up in the balance there for a little bit, but here it is, it's finally draft week, something you've been waiting for, I know, a long time, something I've been waiting for. And I want to ask you guys this, first of all, because even though, Kieran, you grew up in Texas, you're a big Detroit Lions fan, so we got the NFC North contingent up here today. We can all calm down about Aaron Rodgers, right? He buys stock in the Milwaukee Bucks. We can all stop that narrative, right?
No, did you see how unhappy they looked at the Bucks game?
That was an awkward picture.
That looked like on a first date waiting for the waiter to come and get the check because it was just plain awful.
It was awkward. Chris?
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know. Is it something that you almost should have expected from with the Bucks and all that? Is it really kind of that much?
Can
of
we
a
buy
surprise?
steak in the Bucks?
Yeah,
We can. No. The Bucks are not like the Packers, unfortunately.
No, I'm just saying they're cheap.
Well, yeah, you might honestly.
Yeah.
They
Pool our
said
money together
They said
and-
he's only buying he's bought less than 1%. So I can't imagine he paid a whole heck of a lot of money for that. But I don't know. Maybe the price went up since Giannis. They're trying to keep Giannis in town. Said, I don't know. I think it is interesting though. After all of this narrative that we've heard over the last week about how angry he is or frustrated with Green Bay, and everyone's like, well, he's got to hate Wisconsin then. He comes out and says this, and then in the interview says, I love the region, I love Wisconsin, I like being here, so I wanted to invest in the state of Wisconsin. So I found that to be a little bit interesting. But regardless, we're not talking Aaron Rodgers today. We're talking potential future Aaron Rodgers. Is there a potential future Aaron Rodgers in this draft, Kieran, just to jump into the draft talk here?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. There's a lot of similarities with Aaron Rodgers and Josh Rosen. Both California kids, both kind of, they look the same, to be honest with you. Have this cocky, arrogant, depending on how much you like the guy or don't like the guy, is the verbiage that you use with him. Very smooth thrower of the football. Like I said, California college. Even are working together and is a part of this Aaron Rodgers documentary series thing that's on ESPN or ESPN Plus or one of those ESPN channels. So if there is an Aaron Rodgers, it's probably Josh Rosen. And the latest thing today, he might be sliding a little bit. Didn't Aaron slide? He
did.
slid in the draft? I think so.
23 slots to be exact. I got drafted 24th overall.
I think that's about as close to an Aaron Rodgers comparison as you could possibly make.
Well, and the interesting thing is a lot of people don't remember when you think back to that draft with Aaron Rodgers, there was legitimate, serious talk that he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. It was him or Alex Smith, and then Mike Mayock, I think, was the first guy to say, look, Rodgers could be sliding here. People might not be too privy to what how he acts off the field, and I think you could maybe be seeing the same thing, especially after the comments that Jim Mora made. So I want to distinguish something here because I think a lot of people, unless they're big draft people, they see a mock draft and they see 3 quarterbacks. I don't think those are the best players. Distinguish between best available, best prospects, and then a mock draft.
Well, the biggest thing is positional value, right? So if you want to probably the simplest way I can put it is bringing gambling into this. So Vegas sets lines, and then there are injuries. They can reset the lines if they want. There's really only one position that moves the line if the guy's out, and that's quarterback. When Ezekiel Elliott was suspended, the Cowboys' lines didn't move. But if Dak were gone, then they would move significantly. So positional value is the biggest thing when you're looking at mock drafts versus just plain rankings. Typically, guards don't go number 1 overall. Typically, running backs don't go number 1 overall. Running backs, you only use them 15, 20 times a game. Quarterbacks have the ball every single play. It's the most important position. So this year, there's a lot of good quarterbacks and a lot of teams that could be good teams, average to good teams if they get a quarterback. So that's going to raise the level of quarterbacks. And I think, and we'll talk about this later, that's going to help Mason Rudolph.
So let's we can pull up here for those watching on YouTube or Suddenlink your top 5 prospects here. Now this is prospects, not necessarily where they're going to go in the draft. Saquon Barkley, Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson, those are the 3 big names that you always hear at the top of this draft. What is the thinking behind you putting Saquon Barkley first against those other 2 obviously really talented players?
Well, he's dynamic, and I kind of put that there by default because I don't necessarily value running backs that high. You know this. But he is very dynamic. You can use him in every facet of the offense. You can split him out wide if you really wanted to, carry the ball, pass out of the backfield, had the most reps on bench press, which means given the proper technique, he can protect and pass protection. And he's got special teams value. He's far from a perfect prospect. This draft does not really have near perfect prospects. Saquon Barkley had a couple games, including one against Rutgers, had less than 3 yards a carry. That's just, he is limited in that regard. His vision's not perfect, but he's the most dynamic player in this draft. And to me, that's enough to put you number 1, especially when every single top quarterback has significant flaws one way or another.
So one guy that's been in the top 5 as far as prospects go along, most of this draft process is Minka Fitzpatrick. He now drops out of a lot of people's top 5, out of your top 5 as well. What's the thinking there?
Well, don't ask me, ask Minka himself. At the NFL Draft Combine, they asked him, what's your best position? And he said, slot corner. Slot corner is very low on the tier of defensive importance. Now, that probably is his best position, but he also can play both safety spots. He can play outside corner in a pinch. I don't necessarily think he's a great outside corner prospect, but the fact is that he doesn't have a clear position, and so that knocks him down a little bit. He's still going to go top 15, most likely top 10. He could slide a little bit, but he is a special talent. I just think he needs a little bit more of an established and important position to be that high on my board.
I want to talk a little bit about Josh Allen. Where do you see him in your draft board?
Josh Allen, there's a lot to like. It's pretty. It's very pretty to watch Josh Allen throw the football. He's got a great arm. He has a great story, junior college kid, kind of the Aaron Rodgers factor. He's a junior college kid, only Division I, full scholarship offer, was to Wyoming, multi-year starter. Great family, hard work. He's a farm boy. You want to root for people like that. But the saying goes that you can't teach accuracy. Just like you can't necessarily teach pure arm strength, you can't teach someone that just can't hit a receiver in stride. And he struggles there. But if I'm an offensive coordinator, it'd be hard for me not to fall in love with the physical traits and the kind of person that he is. And if you look at everything he's done in this draft process, he's done everything exactly right. He went to the Senior Bowl, and so did Baker Mayfield. Top draft prospects at quarterback typically do not go to the Senior Bowl. But he went there. He, got NFL coaching. He had a really good combine. I assume his workouts have gone well, although I haven't heard either way. I don't buy right now that he'll be the pick over Saquon Barkley, because I think if you're Cleveland, you need, not Saquon Barkley, Sam Darnold at number 1 overall to Cleveland. I think if you're Cleveland, you need someone a little bit more sure, but there's a team that's going to fall in love with him. I love him to Buffalo. He screams Buffalo Bills to me. If I'm going to be playing in the snow and I got to throw the ball 40 yards down the field, he's probably my number 1 guy I want throwing that football.
So then are you willing, because there's this talk of is his game going to be able to really transition? Yes, at Wyoming, one of the very few schools where, you called protections at the line of scrimmage. He didn't look, to the sidelines to okay, what do I need to, audible out and into, but, there's this concerns of can it transition over, because he's so good in the film room and everything, but his brain, they say, is like, it's kind of like Josh Freeman. He's so smart off the field, but when it goes on the field, his brain has to be that much quicker. It's like he can't like get there in a sense. So is that maybe a cause for concern of why he could potentially drop, or why he's such a it's such a game of chances? I know all players are on the draft, but where he is such this question mark of what ifs.
Well, to answer that question, you're going to have to test what relationship you have with the coaching staff over at Wyoming. Because remember, he got the same coaching that Carson Wentz did.
Yep.
So if they tell you the truth about Carson Wentz, they better tell you the truth about Josh Allen. I think Josh Freeman's a good comparison that not a lot of people bring up. That comes down to the board. I haven't heard anything positive or negative about the board. We heard Baker did well on the board, drawing up plays, recalling plays, stuff like that. Heard Mason did well on the board. I think I heard Lamar Jackson from Louisville did not do well on the board. But that's what those private workouts are all about. I think everyone's going to believe that they can teach him how to properly play the position and diagnose the defense more so than they will shy away from that.
So you mentioned why you think Sam Darnold will go number one. We can take a look here at your top 5 as far as the mock draft goes. Now, again, this is where positional value comes into account. You have Darnold, then Barkley at number 2. A lot of people wondering, is it going to be Barkley, Chubb? Is it going to be the quarterback of the future? You go Barkley here, and then Baker Mayfield, maybe a shock pick there for some people. We'll get to Bradley Chubb and Quentin Nelson in just a second. Talk about Saquon Barkley and Baker Mayfield to the 2 New York teams.
Well, normally I would mock a quarterback to a team in the Giants position. Old quarterback, new head coach, new GM. But they seem to be going, it's New York, nostalgia. They seem to be going all in on Eli for the next 2 years. So I think they're going to, I disagree with it, but I think they're going to go and get a guy who can help right away. I think New York loves Baker. I think Baker would love being in New York. You know what I mean? So to me, that's the position, or that's the slide, I should say, that I see him going to the most. They traded up. They're drafting a quarterback. And keep in mind, GM, coach, Todd Bowles, they have a couple years to, build this roster. They need a guy who can probably help him right away, more so than a Josh Allen type who's going to need more time.
How special is Bradley Chubb?
He's very special, but compared to top pass rushers the past couple years, he's not Myles Garrett. Let's just phrase it like that. But he's a really good player. He's a top athlete. He was an okay prospect going into his junior year, or coming after his junior year, going into his senior year, had a great senior year, propelled him at the top of the draft. He's a good story as well. That was a very talented NC State line.
Okay, so obviously we know quarterback is a big thing, especially for the Browns. It's what they need. What made you choose a quarterback first? Because obviously the Browns have 2 in the top 5. Why would you not, let's say, possibly put Barkley, let's say, first, and then, hopefully there's still, there should be a quarterback, obviously, at the 4 spot. What made you not draft a running back first for the Browns?
Positional value was a big thing. Sam Darnold, to me, is their best fit and the best player for Cleveland right now. I figured, why wait? Remember, he was throwing in the rain in Southern California. How often? I was born there. It doesn't rain very much in Southern California, but for his pro day, it rained. And the owner for the Browns was there, as well as their entire coaching staff and GM. So to me, it just makes more sense. And then you can just kind of take best player available at number 4. Maybe Barkley, maybe Chubb. You have more options there. Whereas you just get your quarterback and take best player available 1 and 4. I think makes most sense.
I think that's interesting because I'm in the same way. And if you're the Cleveland, if you're that franchise, I think you have to go quarterback here because your fan base, you've already passed up, you've traded down and passed up Carson Wentz. You didn't know he was going to turn out to be Carson Wentz, and I'm okay with them trading down. I think they got great value for the picks that they did trade down for, but you missed out. The reality of the fact is you missed out on Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, and Jared Goff over the past couple of years. And then a whole bunch of every team, but you're one of them, missed out on Dak Prescott falling to the 4th round. So I think that plays into it a little bit as well. Real quick here, we're about 30 seconds and we'll take a break. What's the likelihood we see those 5 teams take the top 5 picks, or those 4 teams take the top 5 picks?
I'm pretty confident in 1. I'm pretty confident in 2. I'm pretty confident in 3. 4, that could go a variety of directions. A name to look out for is Denzel Ward, corner out of Ohio State. And 5, Broncos, likely a trade, or they take someone to help right away because they believe in Case Keenum, but they could go quarterback very easily.
I think it'll be interesting to see if those 5 teams end up making those picks or if we see some trades like we normally do. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back with Kieran, and talk again about the NFL draft. You're listening to the Border Battle on KXCY. Welcome back into Studio 318 here in the Paul Miller Journalism Building. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ on OSU Student Radio KXCY. Chris, talk about that. That is our draft Border Battle NFL Draft Combine. We're not sure our status. We were not invited to the draft. It doesn't look like we're gonna be first round picks. I have great value as a punter. I'll continue to say that. I booming punts later in the combine. I ran faster than Orlando Brown. Out broad jumped him. I think my value went up.
Yeah,
but talk about that. We're gonna be posting that, right?
Yeah. We're just finishing up the editing process of it. It should be probably on our Facebook page for sure. Within the next day or two, we will have it up and running and have the whole interviews, whole draft thing, the whole 9.
Yeah, what you didn't see there was my highlights. I am one of the smoothest looking quarterbacks. The ball just does not come out of my hand very well. All right, let's talk about we got some good top of the draft talk. I want to talk. We are in Stillwater. This is Oklahoma State. Let's talk about Mason Rudolph and his prospects as a quarterback in this class, because you said, the value of quarterback could end up helping him. To what extent could that help him? What's the ceiling for Mason Rudolph?
Well, it could make him a first-round pick, because what you're going to see is later in the first round, because remember, it's round 1 Thursday, 2 and 3 on Friday, and then the rest on Saturday. First-round picks have a team option for a 5th year on their contract. Rookie contracts are obviously way cheaper than signing a veteran. If a team likes Mason Rudolph, it could be the Giants per se. If they take Saquon Barkley, they could trade back in late into the first round, and they could get Mason Rudolph with a 5-year contract and have another year to develop him, whereas anywhere else you're going to get a 4-year deal. So I think that could help Mason Rudolph a lot. Will it happen? I don't know. He could get drafted even earlier than that, though. He might not need that extra bump at the end of the draft. I mean, he could go anywhere, I think, from 15 to the rest of the draft if someone trades.
I think that's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Give me I think we'll get all 3 of us here, our picks here. I've made it clear on this show, on Last Call, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere, I've made it clear that I think at the end of the day, 15 years down the road, Marcel Aitman could be the best player to come out of this class from Oklahoma State. Who is that player for? I'll give it, for both of you guys. Who is that player for you? Is it Rudolph? Is it James Washington? Or do you go with someone, Trey Flowers, I think, is a long shot, but he could potentially fit that role. Who do you see being the best player from this class going pro for Oklahoma State?
I think it's James Washington. I think he has more scheme versatility. I think he can play outside receiver deep. I think he's eventually going to learn how to play the slot. I think he has the right mentality. He's a humble kid. He's got the college production to back up his talent. I think he's just kind of been lumped up into a group of receivers right now that it's kind of, buyer's choice. It's up to taste to see whether you like him or some other guys. Marcel Aitman, I like Marcel Aitman, but I think he's more role specific. I think he might have more touchdowns than Mason Rudolph or James Washington at the end of their rookie years, but I think James Washington's skill set overall translates better.
And I like the Washington thing. The only thing that concerns me is more of his size with the height. That's, I guess my concern. For me personally, it's not really a quarterback wide receiver. To me, it's Brad Lumblade. I just think offensive line, sometimes they don't get the celebrity status, so to speak, like in the trenches, they're doing their jobs. And so to me, I think it could be Brad Lumblade. I think it's just one of those things that the offensive line doesn't get the attention that, obviously, and I get, you need a quarterback, you need a wide receiver. I get the offensive, where you're most needed, but I just think he's one of those guys that he's just under the radar and he could have a potential good career in the NFL.
He had a good East-West Shrine week.
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of interesting. I think both those offensive linemen, he and Crabtree, both have legitimate chances to make an impact come fall, come camp time, and maybe even steal a starting job. Like, no one really expected Lane Taylor to be stepping up, and he's going to be, if he was a sexier name than Lane Taylor, he would probably have been a Pro Bowler. Pro Football Focus rated him highly for the Packers this year, so I think it'll be interesting to see. I think Marcel Aitman, if you get him, like you said, he's probably a little bit dependent. He's not going to go to the Browns and have Tyrod Taylor throwing him the ball and be successful. That's just the way it is. But if if he goes to Green Bay, I would love to see him in Green Bay. I've made that pretty clear. If Aaron Rodgers is throwing him the ball, I think he's got as good a chance as any. It'll be interesting to see, though, how that all plays out. When we do talk about Trey Flowers, just a second, though, because that is the one defensive player in this draft, or that we're assuming is going to be the only player for Oklahoma State. Talk about him and what he needs to do to make a roster come August.
Well, worst case scenario, Trey Flowers is going to get a training camp invite to the Kansas City Chiefs because Jordan Stearns and Ashton Lampkin are there right now, and even though they had injuries and didn't make the team, they're still getting invited to training camp. So that's the worst case scenario for Trey Flowers. Best case scenario, I think a team takes a chance on him and says, you know what, you're going to be a really good special teams player for us. He's fast. He has good ball skills. He's a little bit thin. That's going to concern some teams. I think he has the potential to be an NFL role player, maybe even a starter. But the first thing he needs to do when he gets to an NFL camp is go and sit in the back pocket of the special teams coordinator. Like, pick up his paper every morning, get him coffee, babysit his kids, do all that stuff because that's the guy that's going to keep him on the team. If he can provide special teams value, Trey Flowers can have a nice role in the NFL.
Yeah, I say to add on that, I agree. It's the size thing. The size is the biggest thing with them being that small, and it's one of those things like obviously with size, you're not going to just beef up overnight. So it's one of those things like Kieran was saying. You just got to get in the back pocket of special teams. Do the little things. Get all friendly with them. In order to get on a roster, sometimes you got to do it.
By the way, you can form yourself into a pretty good player, pretty good career in the NFL, even if you're making the veterans minimum at the end of your career playing special teams. Then you can become a cult hero. John Kuhn is still a cult legend in Wisconsin, and can anyone point out what he's done other than blocking Julius Peppers the one time? Like, he doesn't make super impactful plays, but everyone in Green Bay still appreciates him. So I think there's that aspect to it too.
So I got a question, I guess, for the both of you, kind of to go back to top 10s here. With the Indianapolis Colts, do they just, do they trade the draft pick? Do they, draft a quarterback even though they don't need it and then try and use that as a trade piece? What are your guys' kind of inputs on what the Colts are going to do here?
I think they love Bradley Chubb. I think that's their number one guy, but I had him going forward to the Browns. I think it's a real possibility that he's not there for them. That since Andrew Luck's been quarterback, they could always use another offensive lineman. So if Quentin Nelson falls, that's another option. They could draft Denzel Ward out of Ohio State and shore up that secondary. They have a lot of options. One of them is trade back again. The Bills are going to want to trade up. There are going to be a couple teams that are going to want to trade up and get whatever quarterback slid past the top 5. So I think they are open for business for all possibilities.
I think it's going to, no matter what, I think it's going to work out for the Indianapolis Colts because I think either you're going to have a team like the Bills trade into the top 5, get a quarterback, which means you're going to have either Bradley Chubb or Quentin Nelson fall down to you. Maybe 2 teams trade up, and you have both of them, and you have the pick of the litter, and obviously it looks like they would take Bradley Chubb in that scenario. If not, if those 2 players go, there's going to be a quarterback sitting there. There's going to be a team desperate, hot on the phone that says, look, we need Josh Allen. We need Josh Rosen in this scenario. Baker Mayfield might still be available. So I think either way, I don't know which way it's going to go, but I think either way they're going to end up getting some value out of that 6th pick, something that they're comfortable getting. Right, so I think that's interesting. Your Lions pick at 20. What is the dream scenario? Maybe not something that's going to happen, but dream scenario.
The dream scenario is Harold Landry. We talked about Bradley Chubb and how special he is. This is a weak pass rusher class. Harold Landry, in my opinion, is number 2, and he cannot stop the run, but he can get to the quarterback with the best of them. Junior year, 16.5 sacks. Last year, I think he had 7, 8. He was playing on a high ankle sprain. And if you look at his tape, that guy has the best bend. By that, I mean he can angle and almost get, perpendicular to the ground, parallel to the ground, and get around an offensive tackle. I mean, he is a great athlete. He's 250 pounds. He can run like a deer. I like him a lot. Davenport's another possibility for the Lions there. And interior offensive lineman. This is a great interior offensive line draft. James Daniels, Iowa. Frank Ragnow was one of my favorites, as we discussed. 3-year starter at Arkansas, never allowed a sack.
In the SEC.
In the SEC.
Which I think is interesting that you mentioned Harold Landry and Marcus Davenport, because at the end of the day, if Harold Landry can't stop the run, let's go to the NFC North. Let's start naming off running backs. Jordan Howard, does he scare you? Sure. Is he some all-pro type of player? I don't really think so. Dalvin Cook, you don't know how he's going to come off the ACL. And right now, the Lions haven't had a 100-yard rusher in a few years. And the Packers, who knows if Ty Montgomery is going to be the lead running back. I don't know if it's going to be Jonathan Williams. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Aaron Jones? You don't really know. You look at the quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, Mitch Trubisky, which all you want to say about him, he's a young, talented guy. And then Aaron Rodgers, probably the best thrower of the ball on the planet right now. I think that's a no-brainer if Harold Landry's there.
Yeah, you can always get linebackers to help get stuff to run. It takes a special breed to be able to get after the quarterback consistently, and you can never have enough pass rushers.
Yeah, and if you learn from Ziggy Ansah after this year, and maybe Ansah doesn't have quite the year you want him to, you still got him on the franchise tag right now. You don't have to sign him to a long-term deal if you can draft someone and develop them into that scenario. Chris, if they got Harold Landry, how scared would you be for Kirk Cousins? I'd be a lot scared if I were you.
I would. A lot of it just depends on what the O-line does. The health of the for the Vikings O-line.
So let me ask you this, Chris: is O-line priority number 1 when it comes to the Vikings draft?
I don't think it is actually. I think it's the D-line. And the reason is, and
even
we talked about
Sheldon
this
Richardson this offseason,
right?
Too.
The reason is I'm looking more of in the future in a sense because with we just signed Eric Kendricks now to an extension, but you have Anthony Barr, you got Trey Wayne, some of these young guys. Contracts are coming up in the next few years here. So you got to start thinking ahead of. You're probably going to lose someone from the defensive side. Hunter's another one. You got to think, okay, what's going to happen 2 years from now. So at the same time, I'm looking to draft, for the future. So if I can, I want to get someone on the D line that can kind of like Daniel Hunter. They played minimal in the first few years, and then they got the experience and they took off. So, but I mean, you can never be satisfied with the O-line either. So it's one of those things. It's a chance, but I'd rather go D-line.
Minnesota's O-line is not going to stay as healthy this year as it did last year. That just doesn't happen in the NFL, I don't think. So I think O-line's probably a little bit more important, but I understand where you're coming from. If you're looking at the Vikings, what's priority number 1? And then my Packers, what's priority number 1?
Interior lineman for the Vikings. I think Billy Price, that might be a spot for him that he falls after having that pec injury at the combine. He can play guard or center, so there's versatility there For the Packers, I think they're going to take Harold Landry or Leighton Vander Esch, linebacker from Boise State. Big, fast, strong, a lot of upside, and that's the big word for the draft, a lot of upside. I think that might be their pick.
All right, Kieran, just about a minute left here in this segment. Sell everyone listening why everyone should be paying attention to Last Call this week, because I think they should be. A ton of draft coverage leading up to Thursday when we'll be on air during the draft.
Well, you got to listen for up to the second analysis of the draft. That's all we're doing on Thursday is just draft. And we're going to watch it live. We're not going to spoil ourselves on Twitter, and we're going to have raw analysis and reaction. And both you and I love the draft. I always say, Lions fans, the only thing I had to look forward to every year was the draft. All right, so that's we're passionate about it, and I think you'll see that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun week, and even the days leading up to the draft, the rumors are gonna start piling on probably tonight, tomorrow morning. A lot of these teams have their boards set. Now it's about whether the phone's gonna ring. So again, Last Call, Triple Play Sports Radio, 105.1 FM in Stillwater, 1020 and 1580 AM. Otherwise online, tripleplaysportsradio.com or the free Triple Play Sports Radio app. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking MLB, and was this actually a no-hitter? I'm not so sure. That's next on Last Call, Triple Play Sports. This is the Border Battle on OSU Student Radio KXCY.
Against Kansas in that win, 12 threes made. Against OU, 9 threes made. Against Baylor, both times they played them, 5 threes.
Falling into this role, I kind of like it. Just any chance I get to throw for this team, I go out there and help them out in any way possible. I love to do that for them.
Is it disappointing for this team to know that they could potentially, if given the opportunity, have success in March, but the thing is it's looking less and less like they're actually going to get there?
I mean, you're dealing with one, right now, the premier softball program in the nation in Oklahoma.
Welcome back into Studio 318 here in the Paul Miller Journalism Building. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ, not Last Call. That's the other show that I produce over at Triple Play Sports Radio. I was just, Kieran and I got talking, and that's, I guess, what popped into my head. So this is the Border Battle with King and CJ. I'm King from Wisconsin. He's CJ from Minnesota. And this is the Border Battle. OSU Student Radio KXCY, streaming live online at youtube.com/Border Battle Show. Or actually, it's Border Battle on demand on YouTube, and then Suddenlink Channel 112. Again, we're pre-taping this Sunday evening. It's 5:33 on Sunday evening, so we don't have all of the scores in yet from the NBA. We'll get to that in the last segment. We're going to talk MLB right now, Chris. Manea throws a no-hitter yesterday for the Oakland Athletics. Chris Sale, by the way, not a bad outing, 3 runs in 7 innings. Not awful for him. But Manea throws the no-no. Goes 9 innings, obviously the no hits, 2 walks, 10 strikeouts, and just 108 pitches. So a lot of people talk about how no hitters leak into the next game. He threw as many pitches, 2 less pitches in 9 innings than Chris Sale threw in 7 innings. So I actually don't see this as something that's going to linger on for him. I think he's got every chance to come out and throw strongly in the next outing. Here's my question to you though. Did you see some of the plays in this game, and should this have been a no-hitter?
I don't know. Like at the break, I was watching the replay of the error,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Error.
Like I don't know. Like part of me feels though it was an error just for the fact that he like had it and it dropped. But
Here's my thing. If over-the-shoulder catches are so difficult in football and basketball, everything, and in baseball it's no different. Everyone it's a web gem every time one of those catches is made. If you would have made the catch, that would have been number 1 on Top 10 for SportsCenter. That would have been part of it because that's how difficult the catch was. So if you drop it, why are you gonna give the guy an error for an over-the-shoulder catch that came up straight down over his shoulder and he almost made the catch? I don't understand how that's an error.
So you think it should have been a hit?
I think it should have been a hit. Dismantled the no-hitter. But by the way, it's not a shock that this happened at the Oakland A's own ballpark. Their scoring guy got to make this decision, and I know they're supposed to be unbiased. But when you're doing 81 of these games for a team,
When you have the opportunity, you're gonna.
I mean, come on. Let's not pretend that this is completely unbiased here from the scorekeeper. So I don't think it's any shock that it ends up happening in Oakland. You know, if this was in Boston, that would have been scored a hit easily. The other play that a lot of people were talking about was the play where the Boston base runner was adjudged to have left the base path. Were you okay with this? Because by the letter of the law, he was probably outside of the base path, but it's one of those gray areas. Do you make that call? If there was already a hit that had been like surrendered, I think this would have been stood as safe.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. It's being there was still no was in play. You know, it's kind of like you get that. I'm okay with it because I know it's 3 feet is the whole thing once you're past the 3 feet out of the base path. But because the thing was he totally did go way out of the way just to try and the guy first baseman dove and so I'm okay with it personally. I think. Yeah, they don't look at it as much if there's still not a no in play, but I mean, technically, if you're going by the rule book, he'd win out. So,
technically, by the rules, it was a good call to go back and reverse that and call him out. I'm just saying you don't make that call if the no is not in play.
Right.
And so you get into these scenarios of double standards and whether that should be part of the game. Overall, I'm glad for the guy. It's a no-hitter. Congratulations. You out-dueled by far the hottest team in baseball that baseball's seen in the last, other than the Houston Astros run to the World Series last year. Boston, when's the last time we've seen a team come out of the gates this hot? 18-2 to start the year, and obviously this was a great performance by the A's pitching staff.
Yeah, and give a shout out to Alex Cora, the manager for the Red Sox, because no one thought he was going to be like, they were like, oh man, is he really the guy for the job? Is he going to get enough out of him? First time ever being a manager and stuff, and I mean, he's exceeding expectations right now. He's pulling all the right plugs. So, I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due sometimes for his, the job he's been doing.
Yeah, not bad when you can go out and sign J.D. Martinez, I will say that. But they're doing a lot of this stuff with some early injuries. Xander Bogaerts has been out for a couple weeks now. Through the first 10 games, he was the best shortstop in all of baseball, and my fantasy team is feeling the repercussions of that. By the way, Kieran and I playing in fantasy right now, he's up by 13 points and probably going to win this game because the darn Arizona Diamondbacks don't know how to manage Patrick Corbin. Should have left him in the game like Johnny Cueto. Cueto's still pitching for the San Francisco Giants. By the way, Boston down 4-1. Oakland just hit a 3-run shot, so they're now potentially looking at the first losing streak, I believe, of the year it would be for the Boston Red Sox. Chris, I want to talk about your Minnesota Twins. Is there any concern? Kind of a shaky start, but it's they started off a little bit hotter than they are now, but that whole division not super strong at this point, and the Chicago White Sox, obviously, you're going to get them a bunch of times this year, and they're currently on a 3-game streak where they're giving up double-digit runs, which is pretty much historic. So talk about your Twins.
Again, this is to the point that the season is long. So, it's not a concern. Last year, their record was horrendous the first few months, and then they got hot in June and in July, which is when the Twins seem to play their best baseball. So, I mean, is it a concern you get swept by the Rays? Yeah, a little bit. But again, Cleveland's, a game and a half ahead of them. Cleveland hasn't been doing much either right now, which everyone thought Cleveland was going to be was just going to take off again. But, again, this division, I think it's going to be up for grabs. Who can sustain, consistency the longest is really what's going to be key. I think this is going to be one of those divisions, unless Cleveland takes off, that it'll go down to potentially the last month of the baseball season.
I think it will. I think this is a division that you'll have to look for. That Detroit Tigers playing pretty well, considering the fact what their potential outlook on the season was. They're 9-11 right now, just a game back of the Minnesota Twins, who are 500, but played a couple less games because of all those postponements, which we already talked about whether that should be in play. Speaking of consistency, can they keep it going? Do you think the Houston Astros should actually be concerned with what's going on out in LA with the Angels, the team that I believe is still leading the league in runs, or second to the Red Sox if they aren't leading the league in runs? You got the Shohei Ohtani effect, everything that goes along with that, and you're going to have their first series with them, I believe, coming up here starting tomorrow. Are you concerned if you're the Houston Astros with the way the Angels have played so far this season? Or is that not sustainable in your eyes?
I think I'm concerned a little bit, because, the Angels start out hot every year a little bit, but, then they usually die off pretty quick as well, but as fast as they start. But no, I think they are it's cause for concern. It's not, you're not in panic mode yet, because obviously it's too early for that. But, Mike Trout is now back healthy, raring to go. So yeah, I think there's this the respect level, which has always been there, but now it's more of like, it's getting higher and higher. Like, hey, we have to really show that, it's not the A's of a few years past that, they have some good games and then they just go on terrible losing streaks. I think the Angels can potentially give the Astros a run for their money.
Angels actually just fell to 5th in the league in runs scored, behind the Astros, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Yankees. The AL East is going to be a fun race to watch. Obviously, the Yankees just 11-9 to start the season and 6 games back of Boston, but Boston's not going to be able to sustain an .850 winning percentage for the rest of the season. It's interesting because the Houston Astros have plus 58 run differential already this early in the season, plus 58, and the Los Angeles Angels just plus 18. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Shohei Ohtani and the rest of that pitching staff in Los Angeles can keep up with the likes of McCullers and Verlander and all the arms that they got in Houston.
Real quick, because I know we're running out of time, I want to talk about your Brewers.
Yep.
How about Aguilar having a walk-off again?
13 pitch at bat last night. One of the greatest at bats I've seen in recent history for the Milwaukee Brewers. And you got to be excited if you're a Brewers fan for the way Josh Hader is playing. Another 2-inning save today. And if he's able to go, he's one of those guys that you could have molded into a starter. If you're going to mold him into a 2-inning closing pitcher, that could be one of the most dominating pitchers in the NL or in the entire Major League Baseball for the next 15 years. He's got that kind of nasty stuff out of the bullpen. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, speaking of Milwaukee, Bucks leveled it up today thanks to Giannis. Talk about that next. Border Battle, KXCY. Paul Miller Journalism Building. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ on OSU Student Radio KXCY, Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, Border Battle on Demand, Facebook.com/Border Battle Show. Chris, real quick, we got to talk about this. We're in Oklahoma. Is Oklahoma City in trouble?
I don't think so. I think it's a little early to be pushing the panic button. I think a lot. I mean, obviously, yeah, today's game means a lot because you really don't want to go down 3-1. But at the same time, it's not a cause for concern until the results of today's game. Like, I mean, yeah, you could say today's like you need to win or you're.
Well, they
you're
don't play till tomorrow.
Or
I'm pretty
tomorrow.
sure.
Okay, so you play tomorrow, but still, you need to win the next game or you're in trouble. Yeah, so like there's cause for concerns, but I don't think it's.
You're not panicking yet.
No, I wouldn't be panicking until after the results of tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I think this state has a tendency to mash the panic button, like every passionate fan base does. But I don't think you have to really worry about. I don't think that's a sustainable form of offense as Ricky Rubio shooting 3-pointers. So I don't know how much you have to worry about that. I want to talk about Portland. They get swept by the New Orleans Pelicans. If you're Portland, is there any room for mercy for your head coach here? Or do you have to fire him?
I love what Terry Stotts has done, especially, ever since they lost Aldridge. But, yeah, I think it's time. I mean, you can't – I mean, he's going to take the brunt of the blame because he's head coach and everything. But, it's hard when your roster is not – it's really not that great of a roster besides McCollum and Lillard. Those are your two stars, and then you have a bunch of role players and stuff. And if they if they contribute, great. But if they don't, they can't do it. So I don't know if Terry Stotts is the full problem, but I mean I think it's fair to put quite a bit of the blame on him because at the end of the day, you're a coach. You got to figure out a game plan to try and get the best out of your players and have the best chance to win.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know if I put a ton of blame on him because I think this is a talented team, and you got to put a little bit of blame on how it was built. But it's still, like you said, C.J. McCollum, Damian Lillard down the stretch, you expect to be a little bit better than Lillard's whatever it was, 19 points. They're starting 5, 27, 15, 18, 19, 38. That's pretty good output from your starting lineup. You get 6 points combined from your bench, and you understand why you're in trouble. Although I will say Pelicans only had 12 points from their bench as well. But Drew Holiday, Rajon Rondo, anyone see this coming? Did you see this coming from them, from those two in the playoffs? And I'm not just talking playing well. I'm talking Drew Holiday scoring 41 points.
Drew Holiday, no. Rondo, a little bit because playoff Rondo is just a different level of Rondo. You're giving that look, but, I mean, from what he does...
I just think it's cliche. Playoff Rondo is cliche.
That's fine. But... No, with Drew, I think a lot of it's because he's been injured so frequently, especially in the playoffs, that it's a surprise to see what he's doing. I think he's a phenomenal point guard and he does good, but yeah, I didn't see him going off for 41 at all.
How much do you blame the Trailblazers? Or is this just a reward? Is this more positive for the New Orleans Pelicans outlook that New Orleans shot 39 free throws compared to the 16 shot by Portland?
Like, do I blame Portland?
Do you blame Portland, or is that just New Orleans that you're giving the credit for being aggressive?
I think you have to give credit to New Orleans for just being that aggressive because, especially for the Trailblazers, they throughout the game they're always coming from behind, so you're trying to find ways to maybe get 3-point shots up, and Lillard couldn't find his shot at all this series, which doesn't help because if he's not on his game, McCollum can do whatever he wants, but if you're not getting production out of Lillard, who is your star, then that's not going to work. And face it, Anthony Davis is such a dynamic player. He can hit the three, he can go down. He's dangerous everywhere on the court. Where with Nurkic, I think is for the Trailblazers big man. He doesn't scare you.
More
enough.
of a traditional big man that doesn't necessarily play in today's NBA.
Yeah, and so that's why you got to give credit for just, Drew Holiday too kept driving. They kept driving because Portland wasn't stopping them. And if you're not going to stop that, well, you're just, you're set yourself up for it.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. By the way, Rajon Rondo, just 7 points, but gets 16 assists. I believe that's now like the 15th time in his career, 12 or 15 or somewhere around there, that he's had 15 or more assists in a playoff game, which is pretty incredible. He is a different player come postseason. A couple of upsets I want to talk about, and they're for our hometown team, home state teams. Minnesota beats Houston 105-121. Now, I ask you, Chris, you must be excited about this, and your reaction is, we should be up 2-1 on these guys. So explain why the frustration is that you showed about this result. Obviously, you're happy with the win, but maybe you left some out on the table.
Yeah, again, I'm happy with the win. I think this may be going off on a limb. I think it was the Timberwolves game to lose yesterday, just for the fact of the matter. It's the first time since 2004 that Minnesota's got a playoff. The Timberwolves are in the playoffs. They get their first win since 2004 in the playoffs. So the momentum was going to be there for the players to feed off, the energy, everything. But when you lose the Rockets by 3 in game 1, which let's be real, how game 2 was, that's how everyone thought this whole series was going to be. Was just Houston was going to run Minnesota out of both Target Center, and then they're in Houston. So for them to show up, put up a fight. The thing is, though, the key component is Karl Anthony Towns. You have 13 points in the first 2 games combined. Then you go for, I believe it was 18 last night, which is what you need. 18 from Towns, 20 from Wiggins, and that's what you need. Butler can't do it all. Teague is not your top primary scorer. So,
well, you know what? 18 and 16 last night for Karl Anthony Towns. He's starting to approach being a poor man's Kevin Love in Minnesota.
He did not.
Is he not? Kevin Love, a 20-20 guy normally for every night for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Maybe he's going to approach that.
Poor man's maybe, but
no, I'm
but
just
to me,
kidding,
I
Chris,
think he's more dynamic though than Love is.
He is, especially at that point in his career. When Kevin Love was in Minnesota, even I think you could make that argument. But I agree with you. Karl Anthony Towns is not assertive enough, and if you're going to win this, if Minnesota is going to win this series, he has to step up and play like a superstar. Because quite frankly, and this isn't me being mean to him, he's not. He's not playing like a superstar. You have to demand the ball. You have to demand the shots. You can't shoot 13 times. You can't hide because the shot's not falling for you. Jimmy Butler shot 19 times. Now the shot was falling, but he'll shoot 19 times even if the shot's not falling. That's what good players do. They seek out their shot. So if I'm Minnesota, I'm a little concerned about that. However, if I'm Houston, I'm really concerned about my head coach, Mike D'Antoni, and my superstar, James Harden, both saying this team's in a rut right now. Because this is a dangerous Minnesota team that is now back to full health. And Derrick Rose, I don't think he's going to continue to play this way, was plus 13 on the plus-minus, scored 17 points last night. And if that happens and that continues to happen, I think the Rockets could find themselves in a dogfight of a series.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you're going to give life to the Timberwolves, now they've fed off energy of one game. If Towns now realizes what he needs to do, this is where you could potentially be nervous with this whole rut thing. And it is fair to say James Harden is in a bad shooting slump right now. Granted, game 1, you go 15 for 26. Game 2, you're 2 for 18, and you beat the Wolves by 20, which, granted, when Chris Paul can go for 27, you get 21 from Gerald Green, of all people.
Yep.
So that helps too. But then last night too, 9 for 21. And, at some point, that kind of shooting isn't going to get you. You might get past the Timberwolves because, we're not as big of a firepower shooting team. Let's say, whoever potentially comes out of the OKC, Utah, I mean, if your stars are shooting that bad, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I think you would make a legitimate case, and that's going to make that series fun to watch down the stretch. The Milwaukee Bucks today had a 20-plus point lead on the Boston Celtics, end up squandering that away, but make the plays down the stretch last minute and end up winning the game by a bucket, that tip-in that we saw from Giannis Antetokounmpo. How concerned are you now if you're the Boston Celtics?
I mean, you're really concerned in a sense, and I know teams, you shouldn't panic, but again, and we talked about this in the first few games. The first game, 4 or 5, and scored almost 20 points for a piece for the Celtics. Game 2 was the same way. Jaylen Brown had a fantastic game. And then today, again, Jaylen Brown, 34 points, but you get 10 points out of Terry Rozier, which you need more. It shows like they rely on their starting five a lot, and then you have Morris off the bench.
I'm telling you, man.
That's it. And if they're not all running on their top cylinders, the Celtics right now are in trouble.
Yeah.
Milwaukee has all the momentum. I could see Milwaukee reeling out 4 straight wins right now.
I'll tell you what, there was a big swing in this series. Early in the series, Rozier was playing out of his mind. Rozier's going to have to keep up and continue to play like that because he is the number 2, I believe, on this team behind Brown. I think Tatum is a fine player. I think he can step up and play give you 2 minutes, like second best player on your team minutes, but I don't think he's going to, over the course of a series, be that guy for you. I think that's going to have to be him. By the way, you got 25 minutes now out of Jabari Parker if you're the Bucks, and he finally got going shooting-wise, gets to the line a couple times. He scores 16 points. They needed every single one of them. And then Giannis obviously is going to play like Giannis. Hopefully he shoots a few less three-pointers, though. But I think going back to Boston, you steal one from Boston, and this could be Bucks in 6.
Yeah, and I think it's funny when you look at the plus-minus, the bench for the Bucks, our plus, and then you had Middleton was at 0 for your starters.
Yeah.
Everyone else was in negatives. I mean, it's, again, where's this Eric Bledsoe guy that was, so profound? 9 points on 3 of 9 shooting. Like,
well, you know what the problem is with the starters? The reason their plus-minus is so bad is because none of the starters play defense.
Yeah.
Eric Bledsoe says, Terry who? About Terry Rozier. Well, Eric who? Who's scared of Eric Bledsoe? Who has been this entire year? I don't think it's a really short list if there's anyone on it at all. Because right now, Malcolm Brogdon is the best point guard on the team. And he obviously outdueled Joel Embiid for the Rookie of the Year last year.
Yeah.
But it was a huge thing to get him back heading forward in the series.
Real quick, what's your take on Thon Maker?
Well, he's going to have to play the rest of the series, significant minutes, especially if Henson continues to be hurt, because you're not going to play Tyler Zeller more than the 11 minutes that you played him today, because that's already bordering on like team problem. Like you're shooting yourself in the foot there. So I think it will be interesting to see how that wraps up. Got plenty of more action here in the NBA. We're going to talk about more of that on Wednesday. Kind of give our final thoughts about the NFL draft, where we think some of these Oklahoma State people will go. You've been listening to The Border Battle. We really appreciate it. Thanks again to the crew and Kieran Steckley for coming in on the weekend on a Sunday to pre-record this. You're watching it, though, 11 to noon. Keep it where it is, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll join you again on Wednesday. For CJ, the great crew we have around here, I'm King. Thanks for listening to The Border Battle on KXCY.
Against Kansas in that win, 12 threes made. Against OU, 9 threes made. Against Baylor, both times they played them, 5 threes.
Falling into this role, I kind of like it. Just any chance I get to throw for this team and go out there and help them out in any way possible. I love to do that for them.
Is it disappointing for this team to know that they could potentially, if given the opportunity, have success in March, but the thing is it's looking less and less like they're actually going to get there?
I mean, you're dealing with right now, the premier softball program in the nation in Oklahoma.